Every day, that heavyset otaku boy got beat up by bullies. So he began to study, hoping that earning lots of money would make all that extra weight and otaku life vanish forever. In the end, he remained just a fat, stupid otaku. Once he left school, the only chance he had was to serve as a sparring partner. It just happened to be the only way to pass the test of weighing over 100 kilos. And because of that, he kept getting beaten until the manager, Mei Ring, suddenly asked him to do the report for this month. He tried to say it wasn't his job, but after getting a few friendly punches in the face, he couldn't refuse. The trouble was that so many others had already tried it. Knowing exactly what was coming, he had no choice but to say yes. Because of that, he spent the entire night sobbing while he made his reports. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his chest. Suddenly, the doctor's warning flashed through his mind. If he didn't lose weight, he would be dead. Panic gripping him, he flung out his arm, screaming for help to call an ambulance. Then, a phone message told him his service was cut off because he hadn't paid. With no way out, the young man just let fate take him as he was about to die right there. Before he passed, he finally decided he had to change his ways and couldn't keep living like this anymore. Afterward, he guided the mouse cursor over to delete his study materials folder. After he was done, he rested his head on the desk, finally feeling at peace with himself. His final request was to never wake up in his next life as a chubby, gross otaku. Just as a new message was about to show up, his finger slipped and the words were sent to everyone instead. Mei Ranking was shocked to find that Xiaowu had already finished his report and looked very impressed by it. At the same time, the papers inside the study folder started to spill out. In that split second, the whole office froze in shock as the words on the conference room screen hit everyone like a lightning bolt. All of a sudden, his eyes went wide. Then he woke up as a baby, unsure if this was truly a fresh start. For 20,000 years, the Kyushu land waited quietly in the dark. Suddenly, a young woman grabbed his arm and shouted his name. With that, Tuan Xiao reminded him of their promise to go explore the world together once they left the mountain. Next, he mentioned that he had spent 20,000 years training there, yet time had slipped away without him noticing. In the end, the young man insisted he was just an ordinary guy who would only get into trouble if he climbed down the mountain. Xiaoyu couldn't fathom how someone so normal could lift a whole mountain. In that very second, he realized in his heart that he had truly been reborn. Now he lived as a young master of a dark, evil sect. Because his sect was falling apart and couldn't keep him safe, he went off into the shadows to train in secret. The girl just smiled, wondering how his company had saved her from boredom. Memories from his past life pushed him to train with total focus for 2,000 years. After all that time, he finally figured it out while walking right beside her. Just then, a huge serpent showed up, and he knew he had been whisked away to a magical world. Even so, he still thought of himself as a true Wingan, just one who had lost his spiritual home. As the beast lunged toward him, he realized that apart from his raw power, he had nothing left. Suddenly, he tightened his fist and threw a punch. The hit smashed right into the serpent, sending a huge shock wave rippling through it. Right away, that power ripped right through the beast and carved a clear path through the woods. As he watched the results unfold, tiny pieces of wreckage began to fall from the sky like a storm. With that, the young man suggested they eat snake meat, and the young woman eagerly agreed. His friends stared at him in awe, amazed that he had beaten a dragon so strong it had a golden core. Just as they were about to cut into the meat, a voice suddenly cut in. Suddenly, a man standing on a floating sword shouted that they had stolen the dragon he was chasing. Instructor Xiao Chunho from Xuantian Academy announced that they belonged to the demonic cult. The young man looked right back at him with his face completely unchanged. He then denied the charge, puzzled about how the man had found them. Without hesitation, he dropped to his knees and started to beg for forgiveness. The instructor watched the duo and saw it was just a fox demon and a normal person with no spiritual power. So he chose to stop wasting his breath on them. Then, he charged forward with his sword, switching to his second fighting style. Before the weapon could hit him, Wu Lingen snatched it out of the air, leaving the instructor speechless. As he bowed and offered a clumsy apology for grabbing the sword, Xiaoyu stood there, completely baffled by what was happening. His opponent couldn't believe it, thinking no normal person could ever stop a flying sword. So he turned to the girl and accused her of helping the young man sneak by from behind the scenes. After a brief pause, his face finally softened. So the man chose to face death for his pride and charged forward, wielding two swords. Once more, Wingan snatched the blades out of the air, leaving his opponent stunned, before bowing and begging the instructor to end his life while sparing Sho. The instructor then called upon dozens of swords and sent them flying at the girl. Without even thinking twice, the young man stepped in front of her just as the weapons were coming at them. He darted quickly between the spinning blades to catch them all. In the end, he ended up holding all the swords and apologized for grabbing them on pure instinct. The enemy froze in place, stuck and unsure of what to do next. Then he straightened up, bowed his head, and apologized to the young man, calling him senior, and saying it was all a mistake. Then, he asked for his swords back so he could walk away right then and there. Right then, a blow whistled just past his ear. A huge burst of fire raced into the woods, sending a massive explosion rippling across the distant trees. Wu Lingen couldn't say no, so he agreed to hand back the weapons. With that done, the instructor gazed down at his body to see the damage it had taken. The young man spun around and told them they had to head back to cook for his father and the others. As they began to walk away, Sho looked back at the man to tell him about what just happened. She glowed with a dark power and warned him not to tell anyone a thing. The scared instructor kept saying yes to her orders. Soon after, the young man shouted for her to go, and she sprinted to keep up with him. Standing all by himself, the man watched the two of them carry the giant snake away. The moment they vanished from view, he dropped to his knees and wondered who those people really were. His face darkened as he realized their joy wouldn't last. He chuckled to himself, plotting to tell the Academy's ancient ancestor about the event so the demonic cultivators would suffer. Sho observed that even though he could beat cultivators, Lingen insisted on calling himself just an ordinary person. But he shook his head and said he wasn't weak, even though the girl insisted the man was trying to kill him because he lacked spiritual roots, while the young man explained that he had trained his body much harder. As they walked, she saw he didn't have to train that hard all the time. Even so, the young girl thought it was cute that her friend didn't realize how powerful he really was. Soon, the land shifted to Sho Mountains far away. Next, the young man took the pieces of meat to the cave mouth and shouted that he was going inside. But a sign at the door warned that demons lived there and terrible crimes had been committed inside. Inside, a big bowl sat right over the fire. Suddenly, a big man stepped out of the dark to promise death to anyone who tried to enter the evil place. But Wingen didn't lose his cool. Instead, he grinned and told everyone he had brought some snake meat. Instantly, the group's faces softened into warm smiles as they opened their hearts to the young stranger. Behind the bars, everyone begged for the meat, claiming it smelled amazing and that they were starving. Then the young man told us that even though they looked strange, they were actually his uncles who took great care of him. Even so, the group's leader just turned his face away, clearly not happy. Just then, Wu Di, the head of the sex ring, asked the young man if he still thought of him as a father, even though they hadn't seen each other in 3 hours. Though his son said the hunt and cooking kept him late, his father insisted he knew exactly what was happening outside. Next, the elder blamed the girl for trying to talk him back down the mountain, but the young man flatly denied it. The leader roared in rejection, flat out refusing the request. The result left both the boy and Sho stunned. Even after being trapped for 20,000 years, Wui said he still remembered how clever the righteous people were. So he asked the young man if his own father should bury him, and the boy apologized right away. But he paused for a second before moving on. Then the patriarch lost his temper and shouted that he'd heard those same excuses for 20,000 years. The man stood frozen, unable to say a word, after seeing his son's strange attitude. Despite the danger of being hunted, Lingen said he would no longer stay in the forest. Then the others called him naive, warning that as the last of his family, walking away would be like walking right into death. Suddenly, Xiao cut through the fight to announce they had found a righteous cultivator. She admitted that her partner knocked him out with one punch, even though he tried to claim it was all just a misunderstanding. Yudi listened quietly, wondering if that young man had truly become this strong. But he kept shouting that he was just an ordinary guy with no spiritual roots. He asked how his son would handle stronger cultivators, and that made the girl worry. Just as he won, his dad reminded him not to get cocky about being unbeatable just because he'd beaten a few foes. But the young man answered that he never said he was unbeatable and didn't care about it. He opened up and said his true aim was to break the seal and save them, a feat he simply couldn't manage while deep in the forest. Then Wui turned to the group and asked if they had told his son, but they all shook their heads and said no. In that moment, the young man realized his father had always worried about keeping him safe, even while locked up. Now that he had grown up, he said it was his time to protect the elder. Right then, Sho cut in to remind them of what they'd forgotten. She told them that since he had no demonic aura, no one would find out who his companion really was, and everyone nodded in agreement. But Wui still refused to take the risk, because moving forward would let his power out and kill him. So the son turned to go, begging not to be held responsible for a choice he had already made. The moment he turned around, his father's voice boomed, shouting for him to stop. Right away, something flew at him. He snatched the object from the air just as Sho stared at it too. Confused, the young man held the strange object and asked what it was. The elder said that passing this test was the key to entering the Schwantian Academy, so he pointed it out as the best place to start. Right away, the group got thrilled by the news, knowing the academy was legendary for training golden core cultivators. Then Xiao asked if they should turn back, but Wui insisted that the most dangerous spot was actually the safest one. With that, the young man knew he could find countless cultivation paths there and pick one just for himself. Next, he began gathering his things and stuffing them into one big bundle. Soon, he stepped out with a massive bag, declaring he was off to Schwantian Academy. Curious, the young woman asked how the father got the item, but he just refused to say. Then, Wui confessed he could no longer shield his son, so sending him to the academy was his only chance to keep him alive. While the young man checked the map in secret, the old man told the girl about the mystery of Lingen's body. He then asked her, a fox with 9 tails and power nearly equal to an emperor, to watch over him. Xiaoyu raised her hand to show she knew just how serious things were. Then she wondered who would bring them food after she and the young man left. Behind them, the whole group stopped dead in their tracks the moment they understood what was happening. In the end, Wui cried out for everyone to eat, knowing this would be their final good meal. Xiaoyu waved goodbye and told him to soak up every moment. The moment she turned around, he yelled for her to stop, but the girl quickly warned him she couldn't bring any more food. Then, looking grave, the father told her the whole world was about to fall apart. Right after that, he told her that the secret power inside Lingen had to wake up fast, because there was almost no time left. In the meantime, the view moved to the huge front gate of Schwantian Academy. Over there, an instructor kept the line moving smoothly by making sure everyone stayed in place and nobody tried to cut. The candidates were also told to get their tokens ready for the entrance exam. Carrying his bags, young Wu Lingen watched the area carefully, trying hard not to catch anyone's eye. The instructor said we had to slip those tokens into the mouth of a stone lion to catch any spies hiding in the crowd. Immediately after, he tapped the first person in line to come forward. The candidate slipped the item into the statue, and as it began to glow, it let him in. Once approved, the young man said thank you and stepped inside the academy. Next, the instructor pointed to the next person waiting in line. Behind him, the next player started panicking, wondering if his token was fake and if he'd get caught. All eyes snapped to the line where a sudden scream cut through the air. The examiner shouted that a demon was caught as the statue squeezed a candidate's hand. One of the onlookers said the stone lion never lets go once it senses something is wrong, which terrified the observer. The captured man begged for mercy, but the instructor just ordered the guards to drag him away. Right after the proctor and another candidate pointed at the young man to show it was his turn. So the instructor eyed his backpack with suspicion and demanded he swap his token for theirs. He whispered the words to himself and walked up to the stone statue with a shaking hand. In that instant, the other candidates felt the ground beneath them shudder. Then, he carefully put his hand inside the stone lion's mouth. The instructor nodded that the ticket was perfect just as the statue started to shine. Just as the creature let out a sigh of relief, its eyes suddenly glowed and red energy began to pour out of it. Suddenly, the statue slammed its mouth shut right on his arm. The stone lion's head snapped off its base and got stuck tight on his arm. Suddenly, the rest of the statue exploded into pieces, leaving the instructor completely shocked. He stood frozen in shock, staring at the lion's head that was still stuck to his arm. The young man stumbled over his words, apologized, and hurried to pick up the broken shards from the floor. Then the instructor shouted that he was a demon and ordered him locked up right away. While the guards held him down, he kept shouting that his ticket was real. The instructor told us the lion strikes on its own the moment it smells that dark energy. Only then did the boy finally see that the evil spirit from the others had already touched him. Suddenly, Shou's voice rang out across the courtyard, shouting for everyone to halt. As she showed up, the fox asked the cultivator why he was so careless while everyone else wondered who she really was. The instructor then questioned why a member of the monster clan was getting involved in the academy's business. Right then, the young woman grabbed Lingen's arm and told him she was his guardian. The news left the other candidates stunned, and they whispered that the boy must have a special background. Next, Shou asked the instructor to look into where the admission ticket came from. As he stared at the thing on the ground, the man realized it belonged to the legendary number 1 sect in the whole world. She then told us that the sect vanished 20,000 years ago and that Lingen was its only survivor left. One of the candidates couldn't understand how the world's strongest group could have been wiped out. Immediately after, he told them that the sect's name was exactly what it was called. With that, Xiaoyu admitted that it made sense for the ticket to be soaked in demonic energy. The instructor realized the situation was tricky and had to be handled with great care. So, he warned the two of them to keep their heads down and act normal. Then Shou told the boy to relax while they walked, so they wouldn't look suspicious, and he agreed to act normally as she suggested. Then, the view opened up to reveal the grand buildings of the Schwantian Academy. Not long after, a crowd of new students began to gather in front of the welcoming tower. From above, Instructor Mei Yani watched the whole group without saying a word. Next, Master Hang Lu Hong stepped up to ask about the new students joining this year. The instructor noted that the courtyard was full of students with real potential. Among them stood Bai from Eujian Peak and the young Master Tashanka from the Huan sect. The young man rushed in to ask the girl to practice with him, but she glared at him and told him to leave her alone. Surrounded by whispers, some called her a super genius and the daughter of the great Eugene Peak master. Still, Bid decided her dad was right and ignored all the new guys there. Looking down from above, Instructor Mei spoke about the students' quality but paused for a moment. As Wingen struggled to act normal, he felt a strange presence had slipped into the group. Master Huang chuckled, believing he was just dealing with a braggart who had suddenly found some strength. Instructor Mei wasn't sure if he'd passed the first test with all that flashy acting. Immediately after that, one of the assistants burst out in a rush. From the very top of the tower, the instructor hovered in the air and caught everyone's attention, leaving them amazed. Then, Mei Yanlei stepped up to introduce himself as the person in charge and gave the signal for the test to begin. He told us that only those who survived every test would earn a place among the Academy's disciples. As he watched, young Lingen felt a strange pull, as if the instructor's face was somehow familiar. Right then, the man asked him straight out why he was staring like that. Stuck with no words, the boy just paused for a second. Then he pointed out a loose, shiny thread dangling from the instructor's clothes. After watching what he saw, the instructor just stood there quietly in the air for a moment. Suddenly, he swooped down fast toward the group of students. He grinned with a scary face, congratulated the rookie, and said he was really looking forward to seeing the results. Instructor Mei stood frozen but managed to open her mouth to speak. He then snapped at another person for not stopping at the right spot. Baidi watched the scene, confused about why the instructor couldn't fly and how the rookie dared to say so. Master Hang warned that the boy was in big trouble for messing with that man. Suddenly, the instructor snapped free from the line holding him back. He laughed it off to lighten the mood before calling the start of the first phase. Woolingen couldn't help but wonder if the instructor was losing his mind and if it was truly necessary to rip his clothes just to take the test. Two other students couldn't help but notice the man's huge muscles and scary presence. Soon, one of them recognized him as the legendary master of the sacred punching bag. This power stopped anyone from growing their own strength or casting spells. Instead, its body took the hits and swallowed the energy, getting tougher with every strike. This power made the user untouchable by anyone of the same strength. The sight stunned him, leaving him to wonder if only those who truly love pain could ever become a cultivator. Then the instructor told them all to punch him so he could see what they were made of. The man smirked, thinking that by taking control of the test, he'd make sure the boy failed. Next, he gestured toward Wu Lingen and told him to go ahead, but the boy just warned him to get ready because he was very strong. The instructor chuckled, boasting that no one, not even a soul-level master, could harm him. But right as he bragged about how tough he was, someone cut him off. Before he could finish speaking, a punch hit him right in the face. The shockwave rolled through the instructor and shattered part of the academy behind him. Everyone else stood frozen and silent, watching the scene unfold. Master Hang stood by the window, sweating and staring in shock at the scene before him. He then looked at the huge crater the punch had carved through the mountains. His face turned white as he saw that there was no way out. In the pile of broken debris, the instructor sat on the ground, smoke curling up from his burnt skin. The man lay out cold as a stone, his eyes rolled up and white foam bubbling from his lips. Not realizing how serious things were, the young guy turned to the others and asked if he had passed. In response, the other candidates just stepped back without saying a word. From the rooftops, a fox jumped lightly and quickly. Shou sat down and watched as Lingen quickly became the center of everyone's attention. In the crowd, one student quietly wondered if the examiner was really feeling what theory said he should. At that, Bid turned to the newcomer and asked how he managed to do such an amazing thing. At the same time, Master Hang walked over to the instructor lying on the ground. He realized instantly that the punch carried a force as strong as that of a late-stage giant soul. Right then, the man's eyes snapped open. Suddenly, he jumped right back to his feet. Then, he sprinted toward the young guy, his face twisted in a look that didn't make any sense. The moment he got close, he shouted that the young man had tried to sneak an attack on his face, even as the young man apologized. One of the candidates figured the holy body hadn't fought back simply because it was caught off guard. The examiner said the last try didn't count and that he'd be kicked out if he tried any tricks again. Then a golden light wrapped around him, and his power came to life. One student saw it as the perfect defense for the sacred body. The instructor bragged that even if the kid pushed with all his might, he wouldn't be able to budge him. Without even thinking, the young man drove a hard punch straight into his belly. The fist drove into the man's chest, but he stood frozen and didn't move a single inch. The crowd gasped in awe, amazed that the examiner hadn't even flinched or moved a single leg when hit. Master Hang saw that something was off with how he reacted. A short while later, they discovered that instructor May had fallen asleep while still standing. Master Hang stepped in to declare that everyone had made it through the first round. The candidates cheered the news, still curious about how strong the young man really was. Then, a student stepped forward to introduce himself to Wu Lingen. He stepped forward and showed who he was, Zhang Ma, the new leader of the Huan sect, before he listed out his special skills. So he agreed to take the young man in as his brother, which made the boy feel very awkward about it. Before he could even blink, the other candidates rushed forward to become his younger brothers. Shortly after, a boy named Tanji from the Tanji sect stepped forward and gave us the exact details we needed. He apologized, saying that even though he had gathered lots of information, he still couldn't find anything against his brother. After the young man's friendly smile made him feel like he belonged, Tiang asked which sect he was from. Wu stammered that he was just a lone cultivator. Suddenly, the crowd stepped aside to let the genius from Eugene Peak pass through. With that, the young woman blamed him for enjoying the attention and promised to show him the real difference. Right after that, the girl turned and walked off while he kept his eyes on her. While everyone else looked around, a shadowy figure in a hood stood back in the crowd and watched everything unfold. Master Hang then yelled that no one should start celebrating just yet. He then pressed a red button on the remote he was holding. Suddenly the floor under the candidates' feet began to glow, and everyone had no idea what was going on. Suddenly, a shaking through the group into a dark, cramped room. To anyone standing outside, the building looked like a huge metal cube. Suddenly, a mix of robotic beasts and mechanical knights stepped out from inside the cube. The moment they arrived, the candidates were instantly surrounded by giant armored warriors. Looking down, they realized just how tiny they were compared to the giant machines all around them. Hang Luhong grinned and stepped forward to introduce himself as the master of the Jikao Pavilion and the judge for the second round. He then explained that every single puppet working in the room was built by his pavilion. You had to weave through invisible traps that kept flying at you from nowhere. He struck a match to light the incense, declaring that the challenge would continue as long as the flame kept burning. Tanji then warned that the weapons fired by the puppet machines were very dangerous. Suddenly, the machines' eyes flickered to life, proving they were truly alive. Suddenly, the robots started shooting energy blasts at the candidates. The students sprinted frantically to escape the blasts that were exploding all over the floor. The machines kept blasting away without ever pausing. The blasts knocked many people down, and they quit the test right away. From far away, Hang Luhong watched and saw the young man from the Hien sect was doing just fine. Zhang Ma flipped his switch and stood like a statue while the beams of light spun around him. He grinned and boasted that no one could ever sneak up and hit him with such skill. Suddenly, a bright beam of light struck him right in the center of his chest. The examiner quickly covered his face, trying to act like he didn't just mess it up. He then realized the girl from the Eugenian sect was actually quite strong. Suddenly, her face shifted as she spotted something. While Wu Lingen dug one of the robots into the dirt, he realized fast that he'd be safe if he stayed out of that path. The examiner then yelled in anger, frustrated that the test was all about speed and couldn't be misunderstood. The examiner warned him that breaking even one more puppet would mean being thrown out, yet he just said sorry. At that, young Bid remembered what her father had told her. Then Instructor May snatched the device away, declaring there was no point in wasting words on the boy. He then pressed the buttons himself, eager to show the boy the puppet's true power. The robot's pieces started to fall apart and pile up right in the middle of the room. Suddenly, they all fused together into one massive robot, catching the lone cultivator completely off guard. After explaining that fusion strength goes way beyond the golden core level, Tianji asked how hard the test really was. He also warned that the puppet's weapons were coated in a deadly poison. With arrows sticking out of his back, the young man claimed he felt dizzy while the other guy scolded him. The examiner warned that it could kill someone, but Instructor May didn't care and just smiled as he asked if they really wanted that arrogant kid to pass the test. The giant puppet unleashed a storm of poisoned needles from its hands, but Wu Lingen spun away from them with a quick, easy dodge. He slipped past the danger, halted, and glanced back as though he just spotted something. He looked again and saw that the other candidates had been hit by the attacks, so he apologized. Frustrated, Instructor May flipped the controller and sent an even bigger wave of puppets after him. Suddenly, the young guy was totally boxed in by those huge robots. As a ring of energy gathered around him, he got ready to face his enemy. From far away, the instructors warned him that hurting another puppet would get him kicked out of the game. Lying on the ground, Tongji promised to burn incense for him while the others saw the danger fade. The girl from the Eugean sect just watched, wondering if this was his punishment for showing off. Even with robots all around him, the young boy stayed calm and faced them head-on. So, he made up his mind that this was his only way to fix things. He dropped to his knees and pulled all his strength into his legs. He launched himself toward the giant puppet and hit it with a hard, crushing blow. The instructor froze in shock, too stunned to believe he could fly just as the puppet shattered apart. The other students were curious about his cultivation level because it took the golden core stage just to fly with a sword. Tenji was lying on the ground and explained that he didn't use his power to fly. Actually, he was just using his own legs to jump. The other candidates stared in shock at his strength, but Tanji told him to rest. Instructor Mei knew he couldn't stay up for long, so he got ready to strike. Just as he was about to hit the ground, a bunch of spears were pointed right at the spot where he would land. Stuck with puppets he couldn't destroy and points he might lose, the young man had to figure out a way out. Watching the farmer dodge the blows, he clearly found the answer he had been searching for. With that, he landed right on the spear tips sticking out of the ground. Suddenly, the young man was right in front of the girl. Right after that, he dropped to his knees in front of her. He smiled as he asked what she would do next. Her breath caught in her throat as someone stepped up beside her, and for a split second, she wondered if the man her dad had warned her about had finally found her. In a flash, the young man ducked behind her while the swordswoman stood her ground to protect herself. He kept her body in front of him to block the attacks. Annoyed, the cultivator yelled for him to stop, but he only apologized, insisting that was the only way out he could find. Without a second's thought, the young woman swung her blade to hit him. So she made up her mind to take him down first, before doing anything else. While projectiles and his partner attacked him at once, the young man cried for help, and as he lay on the ground knowing he was defeated, Lingen gave a thumbs up to show off his impressive dodging skills. From afar, Instructor Mei chuckled as he guided the attacks, wondering how the pair would get out alive. With that, the cultivator glanced at the instructors and saw the incense stick was nearly gone. Suddenly, a bright idea struck him as he watched the examiner. He halted his run, turned to face D, and took a deep breath just as arrows began to fly at him. The instructors just watched, unsure if he was about to die or if he was just getting ready. As he blew, a huge swirl of wind whipped around and shoved everyone backward. The blast's force swept the other candidates across the arena floor. Even so, Instructor Mei gripped the controller tight, convinced it was all a trick. The wind blew so hard it made their hair stand up on end. The examiner warned him he wouldn't pass, but the young man asked to wait just a moment longer. He pointed out that the test's incense stick had already burned all the way out. Proctor Hang noticed the wind was fanning the flames higher and started wondering what was wrong with that boy's body. TNG then cried out that Chief Lingen had a secret reason behind his actions. With that, the gust ripped away the clothes of several candidates while the man explained that the chief was trying to share the benefits with everyone. The swordswoman's face turned bright red at the sight of what had happened. Right away, a disciple from the Eugean sect sprinted away shouting that this wasn't over, leaving the young man confused and wondering what he'd done wrong, while he looked at the other injured and bleeding participants. Someone in the back chuckled and said it felt like forever since they'd last seen a freshman quite this interesting. Suddenly, Yu Tianing, the dean of Schwanchen Academy, popped up to praise how lively and fun that year's assessment was. The students guessed that must be the dean, since his wig kept slipping down and he didn't look very trustworthy. Then TNG scolded them, revealing that he was the legendary Red Flame Shura Yu Tianxing. He then told the story of how the dean slaughtered so many demonic cultivators that he used their blood to dye his hair. Even so, the other candidates didn't seem to care much for the story. One of them then asked why his red hair was fake if the legend was true. The dean turned to the young man and asked his name, and the young man answered that he was Wu Lingen. Perched on the roof, Xiao Yu watched the scene unfold before him. The young woman, filled with worry, couldn't stop wondering why the dean had shown up so suddenly, and how she could fix the trouble she'd caused him with Lingen. With that, she reached out to him in their minds, and he finally heard her voice. She quickly told him to put the dean's wig back on before anyone noticed. Instructor Mei begged for mercy on the boy's behalf, but the dean shot back by pointing out that the instructor himself was just as out of his depth. Still, the wig kept sliding off the master's head. In a split second, the young man got ready to make his move. He jumped up quickly and popped the wig back on the dean's head. The elder was stunned that the move happened so fast it was almost invisible. Smiling, the cultivator explained that he had simply picked up something the dean had dropped and insisted no thanks were necessary. Instructor May tried to get Dean Yu's attention and warn him. Suddenly, the Dean popped up with a bunch of darts stuck right in his head. From the roof, Sho screamed in despair, begging him to tell the difference between the wig and the hidden weapons. Instructor May grabbed him by the neck to accuse the boy of attacking the elder, but he quickly apologized, explaining that he had just gotten confused. But the Dean laughed, asking if they truly believed something so tiny could ever hurt him. Instructor May pointed at the dripping blood, but his boss insisted it was just part of the test. The boy looked amazed, yet Sho knew the Dean was just trying to look strong. Then, the young man stepped forward and offered to pull the weapon out of his own head. The moment the dart was yanked free, a thick black liquid erupted from the wound. Then the Dean suddenly collapsed to the floor, exposing his hairy legs. Instructor May sprinted forward and grabbed him right before he hit the ground. The other students whispered that he looked like nothing more than a grumpy old guy with hairy legs on sticks. Examiner Hang then shouted that everyone had passed the second round and that the next test would be the very next day. As the instructors dragged the Dean toward the alchemy hall, everyone else just stood there and watched. One candidate shared that even though they passed the test, something about it still felt off. Just as he was surrounded by the puppets, one of them suddenly remembered something important. They all yelled at once, demanding to know why Master Huang wouldn't turn off the mechanical puppets. From afar, Instructor May kept a careful eye on the wild fight below while Lingen stayed out of trouble. Hidden away, Instructor Xiao Chun couldn't believe the boy would just throw himself into his hands so easily. Later, the students sighed, saying they were almost shot to death during the test. So the scene shifted to the student dorms under the cover of night. There, Xiaoyu spotted him training and asked why he wasn't resting, but the young man replied that he had to pass the test. Then she agreed that the next check was vital to get more training supplies. Yet, the young woman gently told him that it's just as vital to rest as it is to work. She offered to clear his blocked meridians, but the look in her eyes made him think twice. She gave him a compliment on his ambition and stepped right up to him. Out of nowhere, she stumbled right over a stone sitting by the door. In a flash, the cultivator caught her and warned her to be careful, while Xiaoyu cheered inside herself for her perfect plan. Outside, Bid stood frozen against the wall, not daring to move. With that, she vowed she'd make Wu Lingen pay for what he did. Suddenly, a loud noise made her jump. She turned to see what was making that noise coming from his room. Her face shifted as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Looking out the window, the girl saw Wingen's shadow and wondered what he was up to inside. She tried to tell herself it was just a mistake because the boy had only just arrived at the academy. So she took a deep breath, settled herself, and watched the scene unfold with a sharper eye. When she looked again, the dark shape in the window made her fears feel real. Actually, he was just practicing with a jump rope that his uncles had luckily found for him. Meanwhile, Xiao sighed in regret over spilling the red flower wine meant for healing wounds. Next, she knelt down with a rag to wipe up the puddle on the floor. She slipped on the liquid and fell right away. Bid stood outside the room, ready to break through and save the girl. Then, a scary shadow showed up in the window, and she screamed in fear. Before long, she pulled her hands over her eyes, convinced it was far too late to change anything. Inside the room, the cultivator checked if Xiaoyu was all right, but she simply admitted she had taken a fall. She sighed sadly, saying her clothes were now covered in that red liquid. The scene made him feel so uncomfortable that he had to look away. He offered to help her find clean clothes and reached into the closet. All of a sudden, the bedroom door burst open. With his sword drawn, Bid shouted that he was a bloody demon and demanded he give up. Right then, the young man handed a towel to Xiaoyu, who was kneeling on the floor. As soon as she walked in, the girl cried out that he had defiled the body, while the other couldn't believe she had turned into a corpse. The young man was confused and hurt that people called him a murderous demon. He quickly wondered if she knew his secret, shook it off, only to see that Bid wouldn't listen to his words and was already ready to strike. Soon, she drew her sword and unleashed a glowing energy that wrapped around her like a shield. Then the young woman launched her attack with 10,000 blades. Having no other option, he chose to hurt her feelings just to protect himself. With that, he dashed forward at lightning speed, weaving through the deadly energy blades. He was startled for a second by how fast things were moving. Bid warned him not to think she had nothing left to give. She then readied her celestial sword for a piercing strike. A huge beam of energy flew straight at him. To defend himself, he met the attack head-on with a straight punch. His opponent stared in shock that his body had shattered her keysword. Then, she felt something stand right behind her. Suddenly, a hand slammed into the back of her neck, instantly wiping her memory clean. With that, she dropped to the floor, completely out, while her sword rolled away. Sitting on the floor, The cultivator apologized and explained that hiding his identity was the only way to do it. He poured all his power into his palm and aimed a blast straight at the opponent's brain. So the hit knocked her out cold and left her lying on the floor. Soon after, he told them they had to get her back fast before anyone found them there. So the young man lifted her up, resting her on his shoulders, and carried her out of the room. Beneath the moonlight, he sprinted across the academy's rooftops alongside the girl. As he moved, he kept searching for the exact spot where he ought to have let her go. Suddenly, the swordswoman jolted awake, confused and unsure of what was happening to her. He didn't even pause before hitting her again with the same blow that wiped his memories clean. He let out a long sigh, realizing he had almost been caught. Yet something still kept his mind troubled. As he carried her down the academy streets, wondering where she lived and feeling completely lost on what to do next, Tenji watched from the shadows, trying to make sense of the connection between Lingen and Bid. He nudged the door to a room just enough, then swung it wide open. After that, the young man gently lowered her onto the bed. Seeing the room was empty, he guessed she must be staying there. Just then, the young girl stirred from her sleep, confused by what she was seeing. Still, he didn't pause before hitting her one more time to wipe her memory clean. Just as she passed out, the stranger apologized for not being able to tell her who he was. Then he started to fear that using the trick again and again might have jumbled her mind. Even with the guilt eating at him, he chose to do what was necessary to keep his family alive. As he took a look around, he couldn't believe how much of a mess the girl's room was. He then saw the marks he had made on the floor. He was so determined to leave no trace that he grabbed a mop and scrubbed the area clean. While he was cleaning, he decided to take the chance and tidy up her room too. But then the view changed to a gazebo standing alone in a dark forest at night. Right then, a shadowy figure with a hood shouted for everyone to stop hiding. Then, as young Shirao stepped forward, the stranger praised him for staying hidden so well. Then the figure bragged that he could see everything. And so, the young man asked for help with a new student, but the hooded figure refused, wondering why he should bother. The instructor promised to back whoever the family chose to lead next. Soon, the figure rose and asked who the target was, and the answer came quickly. It was Wu Lingen. When he heard the name, he remembered the arrogant boy from the test. The instructor then suggested setting up the game so he could accidentally cause the boy to die. The hooded figure said yes to the plan but warned him not to forget his promise. Right as the figure was turning to walk away, Little Master Xiao shouted to stop him. Not long after, he turned to us with one last challenge to solve. Down in the deep water, a huge sea serpent wrapped itself tight around his leg, holding him fast. Desperate, he begged to be saved first, leaving his ally staring in shock at such a selfish request. The man stepped in because he had no other choice. With a quick move, he pulled out his weapon and hit the monster with a burst of energy. He then sprinted forward, jumped into the air, and struck with a mighty slash. With the beast down, the hooded figure declared the fight was done. Suddenly, Shirao Chunhua tumbled out of the sky and screamed as he crashed through the trees. Just as the man was about to hit the ground, a pair of arms snatched him up in the blink of an eye. The instructor admired the Shirao family's amazing talent, but the young man just told him to stop. With that, the figure pushed him face first into the water and turned to walk away. Not long after, the spirit of Master Dan showed up, and the hooded figure told him that Wu Lingen was far from easy to underestimate. The master nodded and admitted that the power the young man showed would be a real challenge even for him in his prime. Even so, the man bragged that no one in the world could ever beat him. Then he showed us that he was a time traveler named Xiaohua. Once, he was just a regular kid living on the bluest star. After a car crash, he suddenly woke up in a strange world where people use magic powers to fight. Soon, he turned into a young master of the Shirao family who seemed small and unimportant. One day, while he was taking care of the cows, he slipped and fell right into a pile of manure. At that very moment, he discovered the ring holding Master Dan, and his path to greatness began. Knowing his own past, he felt sure that every opponent was just a stepping stone on his way. Huho declared that Wu Lingen was fated to lose, even without any hard feelings, while across town, a young man sneezed for no reason, and after cleaning up his space, he packed up to go. With that, he pushed the wooden door wide open. After saying goodbye and leaving Bid asleep, the traveler stood before his room and realized something felt wrong. The moment he stepped inside, he knew someone had been there. He then found Bid lying out cold on his bed. For a second, he just watched the sleeping girl, but then he froze in panic when he realized a powerful female cultivator had broken into his room. As he steps closer to the bed, Xiaohua watches Bid turning over in her sleep. He thinks about how famous she is as the new generation's goddess, and even while she sleeps, he finds himself admiring her. Then the young man scolded himself, reminding himself there was no time for distractions. He refocuses his attention and turns to look at a piece of furniture in the room. He begins to puzzle over why a girl would be cleaning his room and lying on his bed. So there's only one thing to think. She must like him. Remembering the comics from his past life, he is convinced that, as a hero, his fate is to be loved by a heroine. While gazing at the sleeping girl, he starts to wonder if this bid might just be the one who is meant to be his heroine. A moment later, his face falls when he realizes the girl is still asleep. Suddenly, Master Dan shows up and explains that her mind is broken, which is why she can't wake up. Shirao figured Bid had spent so much energy cleaning her room that she fainted, which earned her a scolding from Master Dan. Without a second thought, the young man leans over the bed, trusting that the first aid skills from his past life will help. Next, he steps up to the bed and gets ready to start his work. Right then, the girl on the bed let out a quiet whisper. Slowly, her eyes flutter open and she wonders what is happening to her body. While the young master leans down to the girl with his lips ready for a kiss, something else is happening all around them. Suddenly, a loud crash makes Wingen turn around, startled by the noise coming from the room. Right after, Bid kicks the door open on her way out and tells him to stay away forever. Sitting on the floor, Xiao Huaho wonders why she would attack him if she cares for him, and Master Dan chuckles, telling him he might be overthinking things. The young boy decided that girls are naturally shy, so a kiss felt like too much of a rush. Master Dan asks how he can be sure Bid likes him and didn't just stumble into the wrong room by accident. With a battered face, the hero admits he's a protagonist by birthright. Outside, the young woman walks by herself through the courtyard, trying to figure out how she ended up in someone else's bed. Then a memory surfaces where she faces Wu Lingen and hears his accusation of being a demon. And as the picture slowly comes into focus, she finally begins to understand what really happened. In her memory, she blames Wu Lingen for using other people's bodies to make himself stronger. So Bid knows she's uncovered a massive secret, and that the stranger in the room was probably Wu Lingen's partner in crime. With a determined smile, she promises she'll find proof that a thief has slipped into Xuanchen Academy. In that moment, her voice cuts through the dark, screaming Wu Lingen's name like a promise of revenge. The shout rouses two female students who recognize Bid's voice and start wondering what happened between her and Wu Lingen. The next day, the students were all gathered on the stage for their evaluation. As they waited, some started to grumble that the evaluation hadn't begun and that the instructors hadn't appeared. Out in the distance, Wu Lingen kept pushing his body to the limit, refusing to stop until he was stronger than before. When Tuzin Xiaoyu tried to help him relax about the test, he answered that he simply couldn't afford to let his guard down. Amid the crowd, Bid watched the scene and couldn't help but criticize Wu Lingen for still showing off. The other students saw her reaction and thought about how Bid had shouted Wingen's name the night before, wondering what had gone wrong. Tianji smiled as he stepped forward and whispered that none of them truly knew the real story behind what happened. Not long after, he started to say that their bond was much stronger than before and was getting ready to share what he had seen the night before. Just as he was about to keep talking, a blade was shoved against his neck and suddenly all his words were gone. Immediately, Shirao Ho stepped out from behind and warned him not to badmouth Bid, so the boy quickly agreed. He turned and walked away with the warning still echoing, leaving Tanji lying there on the ground. The crowd talked about his quick move, thinking he was just a huge Bid fan. Xiao Ho Ho pushed aside the noise in his head to believe she was his destined hero, while Master Dan just watched his growing confidence. Suddenly, a loud voice from someone in charge made everyone stop and be quiet. When Mei Rang Sing walked onto the stage, every student, even Wingen, turned to watch. Then, instructors Mei Yanli, Yu Tian, and Hang Lu Hong stepped onto the stage to reveal the results of the third round. Mei Ani explained that this round was a real fight to decide which class each student would join. After that, she declared that Dean Yuanxing would step in to judge the whole thing himself. Right beside Wu Lingen, Tuan Xiaoyu whispered that the dean had swapped his wig out, but got told to keep his voice low. The dean looked like he heard the whisper, but he just nodded to show he got the message. Then, one of the instructors pressed a button, announced that the third round was a combat test, and told the candidates to draw their numbers. With that done, the students lined up in front of the penguin-shaped machine to get their numbers. Ewing kept his eyes on the others coming closer while he waited his turn in line. When it was his turn, he reached into the machine and pulled out a number. Seeing her perfect moment, Mei Yanlei grabbed a metal shard with paper tied to it and hurled it at the boy. Still in shock from what just happened, he stared down at his hand. In his hand, a torn piece of paper marked with the number 38 was stuck to a sharp metal shard. From afar, Mei Yani watches with a happy smile, feeling pleased with everything she sees. A moment later, he turned to Xiao Huaho and made sure the target had chosen the fixed number. The instructor brags about his amazing skill, but a cough full of blood cuts him off, and the hooded young man tells him to shut up. Then Xiao Huaho flashes his own number, 36, and wonders if the plan went wrong since he's not in the same group as the boy. The hooded figure stands tall, acting like he's better than everyone else, and says he never figured out the real plan. Mei Yanlei tells us that Wu Lingyan looks like he's got a secret skill, so he'd rather have someone else step up and test his strength first. Suddenly, the young man spots a huge shadow moving closer and spins around to face the person coming to fight him. A huge man wearing the number 37 jumps in front of him and tells him to quit, calling him weak. Among the crowd, Tanji and the other students are shocked by Lingyan's first opponent and warn that he doesn't look like an easy fight. Soon, Tianji drops a heavy bombshell. The guy they're fighting is none other than Wang Tu, a legendary killer who never lets any witnesses survive. Standing in front of Wu Lingyan, the man admits that he watched both of his earlier tests. He sneered at the man, calling him trash for relying only on raw strength. Wang Tia bragged about his perfect chi power, then slapped the boy so hard that Tuan Shaoi's anger flared up. Wu Ying holds his friend while staring silently at his opponent. Wang Tiju watches his reaction and mocks him, daring him to start the fight right there. The crowd grows restless in the heavy tension, holding their breath as they wait for the newcomer to finally respond to the challenge. To everyone's shock, he just apologizes, admitting his spiritual power is weak even as those around him collapse. While Tuan Xiaoyu scolds him for being so polite to an enemy, and he simply insists that he's telling the truth. Then Wang Tedu steps up and tells him to kneel if he wants to live. Wingen looks at him without saying a word for a while before finally speaking. Right then, he admits he's weak, but says he has to keep fighting anyway. The assassin warns him to get ready for a loss in the arena before turning to leave, and as she walks away, Tuan Xiaoyu compliments Wu Ying's bravery, leaving him looking confused. Wang Tu is far away, but he still reminds Mani of their bargain. Kill the boy to join the rich, and the assassin smiles as he walks off to show Mani just how powerful he really is. Mei Yanli just says he hopes Wu Lingyan doesn't get kicked out in the first round. Not long after, Mei Rexing calls the drawing to a close and leads the freshmen to the arena for their very first battle. The crowd cheered as number 1 by D was the very first name called out. Next, number 2, Zhang Ma steps into the arena and suggests growing stronger together, which makes the crowd furious. While everyone tossed things at him, Zhang Ma dodged them with a grin, telling them that hitting him from behind wouldn't work. Soon after, he got struck right on the head, which knocked him off balance completely. The food bounced off and splattered right onto instructor Mei Ren, leaving her covered in a mess while Zhang Ma hurried to apologize. From afar, Xiao Hua and Mei Yani stood and watched the mess in the arena. With a hard stare, the hooded boy promised to remember Zhang Ma's name for taking the woman who belonged to him. Mei Yan Li wondered how she could have drawn so close to him so fast, only for the mysterious young man to explain that it was his hero's special glow that made it happen. Dean Yuaning coughed to clear the air and shouted for the match to start right away. Finally, the instructor released Zhang Ma, who was still messy from the crowd's leftover food. From the other side of the arena, Bid just said this was exactly what she had wanted. So Zhang Ma decided to reveal his real skills to finally win her heart. Then, he got ready to unleash one of his strongest moves. He used his shadow clone trick to make dozens of copies of himself scatter all over the arena. Tenji said the technique made fast-moving clones, but Wingen wasn't impressed. The clones closed in on her, mocking that she'd never win until she found the real body. Bid stood there, quiet for a moment, just watching. And then, in a blink, every clone disappeared until only Zhang Ma's legs stood alone in the center of the arena. With a quick move, the young woman lands a solid kick on her opponent, who retorts by asking if she thinks he's an idiot. Just then, he twists in agony and shouts that she used a terrible, cheap trick. He smiles and starts to show that things aren't what they seem. Soon after, Zhang Ma shows a metal shield, saying he brought it just in case because he had been bothering other people before. Realizing his kindness was rejected, he stops being merciful and starts gathering power in his hands. As he launches the energy sphere toward Bid, he must weave through her clone's fast attacks. Wu Lingyan asked the crowd why he didn't just fire the chi sphere straight at the enemy. Tanji explains that a cultivator's strength sets the range and force of their energy, and simply gathering that much power is already a huge achievement. After hearing the explanation, Lingyan thinks about how incredibly strong his father and Tuchan Xiaoyu really are. Bid slips through every punch in the arena and challenges his opponent, daring him to show more. Zhang Ma waves his hand to show that this silly act has to stop. He warns her not to underestimate him before turning her own attack back on her. He springs backward instantly to create some space. He grins with victory, bragging about how he rules the glowing orb of energy. Finally, he boasts that his skill is far beyond what she can imagine and then strikes right away. She uses her quick speed to slip past his attack. The cultivator shakes it off and starts dodging the floating balls with quick, clever moves. The instructors noted that the Hiwin sect has a special trick. They can send their inner energy out of their bodies and control it. One student shows Wu Lingyan how energy threads can control big attacks, and he is so impressed. Back in the arena, Bid stares down the incoming energy sphere with a look of pure determination. She pulls out her sword, annoyed that she has to fight such a terrible enemy. She moves just once, calls the energy sphere a disgrace, and cuts it right in half. The slash flies straight ahead and hits her enemy right in the face. Suddenly, Zhang Ma's metal shield bursts apart, leaving him stunned before he drops to his knees, realizing she not only stopped his attack, but is clearly the one for him. The blow knocks the young man out, leaving him lying defeated on the arena floor. Wu Lingyan stared at the scene, puzzled by how they were keeping the energy under control. With a look of approval, Instructor Mei Ranking announces that Zhang Ma can no longer fight, crowning Ba the victor. As the crowd cheers for Yujian Peak's win, the swordswoman stands alone in the center of the arena. Sitting beside Tan Xiaoyu, the young man looks on in awe, wondering if this is truly what a fight between cultivators feels like. Suddenly, a girl pops out holding a huge chicken leg. At the noise, Lingyan turns around to see what's going on. The pink-haired girl spots Bid and realizes he is the top new generation cultivator, showing how much she admires him. Not long after, she shares that she dreams of becoming that strong someday too. A new arrival walks up to Wu Lingyan, who is stunned by how tall she is. She bumps into Tuzan Xiaoyu by mistake, and he is so surprised by the crash that he freezes in shock. In that split second, the fox decides that this is exactly what makes Lingyan happy. The pink-haired girl sees the boy staring at the meat and, after noticing everyone watching, hands it to him while asking if he really just wanted to eat. Even as Wu Lingyan scolds himself, he admits he's starving from the training and grabs the chicken leg. Tuchan Xiaoyu freezes in panic, unsure of what to do when she realizes he actually just wanted the food. She couldn't believe a stranger knew Lingyan's heart better than she did. As the instructor tells Zhang Ma to leave the arena so the next fighters can get ready, the moment shifts. Wu Lingyan chews with his mouth full and asks the girl who fed him what her name is. She grins and tells us her name is Mang Chan, a student who came to the academy last year. Tuchan Xiaoyu asks the young woman if she is a senior, but she shakes her head and ducks behind the meat, saying, "That's not quite it." Shortly after, Morang Chan admitted she was retaking the year because of her poor grades and had come to take the placement exam. As she eats, she admits that bad grades could get her kicked out, but Wu Lingyan can't help but notice she looks totally unfazed. A moment later, Tanji steps up to share something we might not know. He tells us that Senior Morang comes from a legendary family of alchemists who are honored in all 9 provinces. So, he explains that she figured out a way to turn alchemical ingredients into food without making them lose their special power. Wu Lingyan's eyes went wide when he finally figured out that the meat he just devoured was actually a spirit pill. In that instant, he feels terrible for eating something so precious, but Mang Chan puts his mind at ease. She says she just can't watch someone else go hungry. Wu Lingyan and Xiaoyu stood totally silent, stunned by her amazing kindness. Moved, he calls her an angel while the fox beside him grumbles that it's not that big of a deal. Suddenly, a rush of fans swept by, making a way for the talented young one. Right then, Biddy steps forward with a sharp look in her eyes, completely ignoring the chaos around her. Murang Chan steps right up to her without even a second's thought and asks for an autograph with pure admiration. As she waits with her heart pounding, Bid just stares at her like ice, leaving Wu Lingyan and his guardian in a heavy, quiet silence. The number 1 says no to the request but warns him to be careful about who he lets in his life. She then looks at Lingyan and vows to uncover the truth about what happened the night before. As she walks away, the crowd starts to wonder if what Tanji said about their relationship was really true. Because of this, Murang Chan asks if he's truly close to Bid, but the young man shakes his head and says he barely knows her. She brushes off his answer, takes his hand, and asks him to introduce them so she can train to be as strong as the senior. Suddenly, Instructor Mei Ren's voice cuts through the air, calling out Murang Chan's name twice. From the stage, he chides her for missing the call and yells for her to rush to her match. While running, the girl pleads with Wu Lingyan not to forget her message, and he promises to do his best. So, Tuzan Xiaoyu tells him to stay away from her, but he insists that she's a good person. He thought that anyone who truly cares about a stranger can't possibly be a bad person. Standing on the stage, the instructor tells her this is her final shot to pass the test. The girl takes a deep breath to get ready for the fight. She grits her teeth and promises herself that she must win just one fight or she won't be able to stay. The idea of going back to that dark place scares her so much she can't even think about it. The instructor then shouts the next fight and calls number 36 to step up. Hearing the call, a hooded figure starts walking toward the stage. Murung-chan watches her opponent come closer, and her face suddenly fills with total shock. Xiao Huaho drops his hood to show a smiling face and shouts that he has finally made it. With everyone set up and ready, the instructor is about to blow the whistle and start the game. In the middle of it all, the two fighters stood face to face with serious looks, completely ready to fight. From the upper rows, Yu Qinxing and Hang Luhong can't help but wonder how a young lady from the Murang family ended up taking the freshman test. The serious young man soon explains that she failed almost every test, even the alchemy exam, and will likely have to repeat the year. So they both agree that if the senior student loses every match, they'll have to send her back home. Then Tianji tells Wu Lingyan that even though he has prepared strong healing foods, the girl still can't fight. Right in the middle of the arena, the instructor steps back into position, ready to give the signal. Then he leaps back and shouts that the game has started. With her fists tight, the Murang Aries whispers to herself that she can't lose. Her opponent, on the other hand, remarks that he never expected to be fighting such a cute girl. Soon after, the young man starts to think he'll win the game without any trouble because of all the experience he has. Feeling even more sure of himself, he imagines that after the fight, both she and Bid will be amazed by his strength and come to join his wild crew. Just then, the girl screams and lunges ahead to throw a straight punch. She punches the young man right in the face, catching him completely off guard. The blow knocks him flying backward, but his opponent leaves no room to catch his breath and strikes again. Then Wu Lingyan wonders why that fool is just standing there with a grin, and Tuzan Xiaoyu guesses he must be lost in a happy thought. Master Dan scolds him for daydreaming, but the fighter insists he'll win because he's the protagonist. Back in the fight, Senior Murang rushes forward and delivers another straight punch to her rival's face. Just as the blow lands, he grabs her fist and stops the attack right at the last second. The young man blocks the blow and warns that the same trick won't work on him again. Right after, he picks her up and tosses her across the arena. The girl hits the ground hard just as her opponent begins to rise for his next move. Even with her guard up, she gets ready to charge forward once more. With that, the young man uses his speed to make sure that no punch can ever land on him. Among the crowd, Wu Ying shouts words of encouragement for the senior, much to Tuchan Xiaoyu's displeasure. She breathes hard, her legs feeling too weak to keep fighting. Even though she wanted to quit, she refused to lose and pulled out 2 giant meat legs to keep fighting. To her rival's surprise, the girl began devouring the food right there in the middle of the arena. Then Tanji reveals that the fighter is eating special spiritual food to boost her strength, which makes Wu Lingyan realize she wasn't actually hungry. Suddenly, he confesses the food is just pills and warns that swallowing so many at once could cause serious trouble. Suddenly, the gathered power bursts into a blinding flash that leaves the young man seeing only white for a split second. Next, the Murang Aries shows up with torn clothes, yet she is surrounded by a powerful glow. Back in the crowd, Wu Lingyan and Tuan Xiaoyu couldn't tell if they'd just seen her body explode, or if it was only her clothes that had blown up. The young man sneers with a bloody nose. With that, he boasts that even a last-ditch effort won't help the senior win, but he's told to wipe his nose first. She ignores the comment and says she has to try, even if it looks impossible. With a loud cry, she rushes at her opponent hard enough to crack the arena floor. The attack darts straight at the fighter, who stiffens up just before the hit lands. Master Dan warns him that her strength has now surpassed the chi refinement stage, but he just nods, saying he already knew. Then the fighter shouts that the battle isn't done and gets ready to strike again. With that, the young man announces he's finally ready to start fighting for real, too. Then her fist smashes right into the sword he holds up to protect himself. The sudden crash jolts him so hard he freezes in shock for a second. Then the punch breaks through his guard and lands right in his chest. Wu Yuing is awed by the senior's strength. Yet Tushan Xiaoyu sees that she is just pushing her body to its breaking point. Right after, the observer warns that at this intense level, the young woman won't be able to hold on for more than a few minutes. In the center of the ruined arena, the ARS pants for air, her sweat dripping down her face as she wonders if she has finally won. From the high platform, the instructor asks if the boy was killed by blows, but Dean Yu Tianqing shakes his head to say no. The dean's face was grave as he warned us the fight isn't over yet. Through the smoke, a sword shape emerges as the opponent gasps, shocked that a local girl has pushed him to his breaking point. Despite the pain in his face, he rises to prove his true strength. With his sword resting on his shoulder, the young man says it's finally time to show how strong he really is. Then, with a bruised face, he warns that this time he won't hold back. With that, he charges ahead, vowing to give his opponent no quarter. Eris Morang feels shocked as he spins around her faster than he expected. As the fighter jumps up, Wu Lingyan yells for her to look up, causing her to strike from above and crash down, breaking the arena floor. Just in the nick of time, the girl jumps back and ducks the hit. Holding a glowing blue flower, his rival whispers that he has no way to get away. He then shoots the blue heart fire lotus right at the young woman. Blue flames burst into life, swallowing the fighter whole and tearing a hole in the arena. Amid the crowd, Wingen and Tuchan Xiao stand frozen and quiet, watching the scene unfold. As the fire roars around her, the girl screams while her clothes burn away in the intense energy. Suddenly, Tuan Xiaoyu covers Wu Ying's eyes so he can't see, and as the crowd reacts to the strike, the instructors spot the blue lotus flame and realize the match is over. Standing in the smoke, the young man faces his opponent and asks what's wrong. With a smirk, the fighter challenges her to give up, but she just glares right back with pure determination. Silent as the night, Ares reaches for a bottle and begins to chug its contents. Suddenly, a burst of fire wraps around her and the bottle cracks into pieces on the floor. The sudden reaction left the young guy utterly stunned. Then, the fighter lunges forward screaming, unleashing a blast of power that sends debris flying up from the floor. The young girl rains down a storm of fast punches on his sword, but he can barely keep them from hitting him. As the instructor watches the scene, he starts to wonder if the girl has lost her mind. Wu Lingen wonders if the surge in her power comes from leveling up, but Tuchan Xiaoyu shakes her head and says it's impossible. The fox tells the senior that she's taking even more pills to push her body to the limit. Tuchan Xiaoyu realizes that the young woman is right now literally burning away her own life force. With wounds bleeding and a scream tearing from her throat, the fighter keeps pushing forward, refusing to let go of the dream that she can't lose. Noticing how stubborn his opponent was, the young man warned that he wouldn't hold back anymore. With a fresh move, he traps her inside a giant blue lotus that bursts open, sending her flying. The second he touches the ground, the fighter gets ready to finish the fight. Seeing the danger, Instructor Mei Ranking yells for the match to stop right away. Defying the warning, the young boy throws his blue lotus whirlwind attack right at Ares. The instructor roars to halt the game, screaming that it's already finished. Mei Ranking stares in panic and knows she can't stop it in time. Struggling to stay awake, she wonders if she's truly lost forever. Suddenly, a memory flashes in her mind of a relative hurling her food away and shouting that her cooking shames the family. In her mind, the young girl wonders why the Murang family can't escape their curse when her cooking works just like their magic pills. But she only gets slapped for thinking that cooking is a shameful disgrace to their name. So her family sends her off to Zhuanshan Academy with a plan. If she doesn't make it, they'll force her into a marriage. Then, a family member kicks her out, shouting that she's useless and bringing shame to the clan. The memory fades out with the girl lying on the ground, crying while she tightens her fists. She stares ahead with a serious look and promises that the food she cooks can be just as powerful as any medicine. Back in the present, with energy swirling around her, the fighter wonders if anything can truly change. Just as the energy blast was about to strike her, it vanished in the final split second. Suddenly, Wu Lingen steps in front of the girl and blocks the final strike. With a serious look, he stands before his rival and says he can't hurt her because Senior Murang is a good man. When asked if he's trying to stop him, he confirms he will if his opponent intends to hurt the girl. The fighter smirks and calls the challenger brave for daring to face him. Suddenly, Instructor Mei Ranking leaps between them, yells for everyone to leave the arena, and declares the match finished. The referee points to the injured young man and declares him the winner. He spun his weapon and turned to walk out of the arena. Before he goes, he tells the other guy that if he doesn't win his next match, he won't get to fight him in person. Not realizing how dangerous things really are, Wu Lingen simply says he'll give his best shot to get through the first round. Tuzan Xiaoyu yells at him for acting so calm when danger is right there, but he has no clue what's actually going on. Right then, Ares coughed, still weak from the fight. Wingen helps the young woman up, checks if she is all right, and she thanks him for saving her life. She hung her head in sorrow, wishing she could have won just one round despite trying her hardest. Then, the girl begins to cry from frustration. Suddenly she vomits, and a startled Wu Ying urges Tuan Shou to grab some healing pills fast. As he holds her tight and tries to soothe her, the fighter shakes her head and says she's okay. She quickly admits she ate too much, which makes Tuzan Xiao groan at how gross the whole thing looks. Wingen gently helps the tired veteran Murang lie down to rest, and he thanks her. Before they could get away, Instructor Mei Ranking blocks their path and demands to know where the boy thinks he is going. He then tells him it's his turn to step into the arena and fight. The evaluator then shows that his rival is Wang Tju, who looks at him with a sneer. Wingen asks Tuzan Xiaoyu to lead Ares off the stage, and the young woman wishes him luck. As she holds the fox close, She hears its quiet complaints in its mind about having to look after such a silly human. Before you can even blink, Mei Ranking shouts for both sides to get ready to fight. In the arena, Wingen stands ready to face the challenger waiting on the other side. Wang Tju sneered, acting like he had finally thrown away his last shot at staying alive. The young man just stood there, silent and still, giving not a single sign that he'd heard a word. With a quick leap, the instructor jumps back and shouts that the game has officially begun. Slamming into the ground, his rival shouts that if this is how it's going to be, he'll have to kill him. While the crowd fears Lingen's power, Tuzan Shou stands up to calm them, admitting they don't truly know just how strong he is. With absolute confidence, she declares that no attack will bring him down. While in the arena, Wang Tu just watches his enemy, ready for the final blow. Yu Lingen can't figure out his opponent's stance and wonders what move that is. Suddenly, Wang Tu screams and bursts with a dark energy that tears his clothes right off from top to bottom. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupts before Wu Lingen, who stands there in quiet stillness to watch it happen. And that's when his opponent shows up in pink underwear to do his spinning pole dance. The sight was so shocking that the young man's nose started bleeding right away. Deep in the crowd, a few fans start backing away as bright blood trickles down their noses. Tian is so disgusted by the move that he says people can't even stand it anymore. Instructor Hong Luhong says that using such a brutal move brings shame to the academy. Dean Yuaning shakes her head and says the flashy tricks are just there to distract you. He then asks him if he hasn't realized that something is wrong with everyone in the crowd. Wu Lingen kneels, one hand pressed to his aching stomach as nausea twists him and he can hardly stand. Wang Tu grabs the chance, jumps forward with his weapon raised, and screams for his foe to die. The pillar crashes down with a loud thud, sending a cloud of dust and rubble flying into the air. Even with his strength fading, Yu Lingen leaps out of the way just in time to avoid the hit. With a low growl, Wang Tju readies another strike, leaving no room for his opponent to run. The rival spins like a whirlwind around Wingen, dancing with his iron pillar. The crowd in the audience can't take it anymore. So many are covering their eyes and throwing up from the sheer nausea. Right beside Tuzan Xiaoyu, the world suddenly wakes up to what is truly going on. She reveals that the nasty show is just a distraction to hide the real trick, the toxic smoke pouring out from the iron pillar. Wang Tu grins with victory, declaring that his deadly smoke has now filled the whole arena. The young man clamps his hand over his mouth, fighting hard as the poison starts to make him feel sick. Just then, Tuan Xiaoyu shouts at him, calling him a terrible person for hiding his use of poison. The assassin replies that when life hangs by a thread, any trick is fair game. From far away, Mei Ani watches with a smile, happy with how the hired fighter is doing. Next to him, Xiao Huho admits he nearly got tricked, but the instructor shakes his head and says he actually fell for it. Soon after, Wang Tju lunges forward with a blood-curdling scream, commanding his rival to meet a painful end. But the poison has frozen the young man's body, leaving him unable to move while his head throbs and leaves him wondering what is happening. Slowly, his face changes to panic as he sees just how serious things have become. He mocks his struggling rival, sneering that the man is still fighting while barely using even a tenth of his strength. He steps in to deliver the final strike and put an end to the pain. With that, the pillar swings right into the young man's face, knocking him back and hurting him while his enemy watches with pure contempt. Right after, he starts a wild iron pillar dance, landing a series of hard hits. A relentless storm of blows crashes into him. Yet the young man stands his ground and takes every hit. While Murang Chan yells at him to quit the fight, Tianji grows worried about losing. Desperate, the fox pleads with the instructors to end the match right now. But Mei Rangxing says he can't stop the fight because the boy still has the power to fight back. Even so, the blows keep raining down on him with no mercy at all. From a distance, Bid watches, wondering if that's all the power he has, and feels let down by what she sees. With his rival already tired out, Wang Taju readies himself for the last big strike. A moment later, the pillar hits its mark perfectly, splashing blood all over the arena. The crowd stares in shock, and even the killer can't believe what just happened. Even so, the young man uses his hands to grab the iron pillar and stop the attack. Not understanding, his enemy asks why he keeps fighting with so little strength left. With little energy left, the wounded young man says he must pour all his strength into one final punch. With a sneer, the rival laughs at him and asks if he really thinks such a weak punch can hurt him. Right then, the fist slammed into Wang Tu's side. Right away, his face goes blank with shock as the blow hits him. All at once, a burst of power shoots out from inside him, and he lets out a scream as the pain hits him hard. The punch sends out rings of power that ripple across the arena from where it hit. The blast is so strong that the audience can see it and fall silent, leaving him wounded as Wang Tu stares at the young fighter in disbelief at what just happened. With a final breath, the wounded assassin collapses onto the arena floor as Wingen stands victorious, declaring the fight won. Wang Tu lies on the ground and whispers that he will never lose. He then wonders how his opponent managed to beat him so easily, even though he was poisoned. Wingen just turns his back instead of answering. With a serious look, the young man showed that even when he was weak, he still held that great power. The defeated man calls Wu Lingen a monster in shock, and soon after, instructor Mei Rank Singh declares Wu Lingen the winner of the round. The young man gives a quiet, happy smile as he celebrates his win. Next, the instructors choose to clear away the poisonous mist hanging over the arena, and right after that, Hang Lu Hong sends a device soaring across the battle. The artifact drops a healing rain that washes the poison away from everyone. As the rain washes over him, Wingen feels his strength return. Right then, Murang Chan bursts toward him to shout congratulations on his win. She hugs him and tells him he's even stronger than she ever dreamed possible. The sight wakes the fury in Tuzan Xiaoyu's eyes, and he steps forward with a glare that threatens them. As the young man is hugged, the fox girl creeps right up to him, ready to jump in. Tu Shan Shou shouts out to stop Mang Chan from getting too close to Lingen. The girl tries to explain herself, but the fox girl insists she only wants him for his body. From afar, Shurao Ho complains that he should be the one surrounded by beautiful girls, and Mei Yani asks him why he thinks that. The instructor finally nodded, admitting the winner was far stronger than he had ever imagined. Then Mei Yani turns to Xiao Ho and asks if he's really sure he can take on that opponent. The young man stands tall and says the word lose simply isn't in his dictionary. Suddenly, Shurao Chunhua steps out from behind and presents him with 500 spirit stones to light the academy ablaze. Frustrated, the young man presses for answers about the penalty, but Mei Yanlei holds him back to keep him from acting on a whim. He whispers that the man runs the academy's discipline and is the dean's uncle, while Xiao Chunhua watches the scene with a serious, intimidating face. Mayan Li notes that the dean is watching the scene from afar. Xiao Huaho grumbles but gives in, reluctantly handing over a bag of spirit stones to pay the fine. Right away, he gets hit with another punishment. 1,000 stones for viciously attacking a school staff member. As Mei Yanlei tries to soothe him, the young man screams in rage before finally agreeing to pay. The moment they walk off, he drops to his knees and vows to make the dean and that old man pay twice as much for what they did. Xiao Huaho crashed to the ground with all his anger, shooting one last glance at Wingen like he was blaming him for everything. Suddenly, Wingen shivered as a cold chill raced down his spine, and he whispered that the air felt strange, which made Tuan Xiaoyu lean in with curiosity. Soon, Tanji cheered for his win against the deadly assassin, but Wu Lingen shook his head and said the fight was far from simple. With a sly smile, the informant whispered that the fight had given him secrets about Wang Tu that he could sell for big money on the black market. Just then, instructor Mei Renang shouted at Tanji to make sure he remembered he still had to face off in the first round. The boy was shocked to realize it was his turn to fight. He stepped carefully and firmly into the arena to face his opponent. Yu Yak, a quiet young man with red hair, stood on the other side, waiting patiently. Up in the high seats, Dean Yu Tianqing told Hang Lu Hong that the young man was indeed his worthless grandson. He explained that since he refused to learn the family's ways, he had no choice but to send him to the academy. Back in the crowd, the secret spilled out and sent the students whispering nervously about who the rival really was. Even as Wu Lingen's team worried, Tanji stayed cool and told them his boss was way off about how strong he really is. Holding his book, he said that clever thinking could make up for a lack of fighting strength. He faced Yujaksu and showed that he knew a lot about him because Yujaksu was the dean's grandson. He stood tall and promised that with the secret skills of the Tanji sect, he'd never back down from a fight. The moment the instructor called the match to start, the two locked eyes and stared hard at one another. Tanji suddenly called on his special power, and a glowing eye opened right on his forehead. Tu Shan Xiaoyu, taken aback, revealed that this was a rare secret art of the Tanji sect that could let a few people see what's next. Watching Tanji's stance, she noted he had been saving his best move for this exact moment. Meanwhile, Yujo braced himself, eager to see what kind of power that move held. Focusing his mind, Tanji began his own special way of thinking to solve the mystery. The technique showed that Yujaksu had an 85% chance of starting the fight with an earth attack. The moment Yujaksu pushed the earth rock forward, TNG had to leap away fast to avoid getting hit. From far away, Yujaksui watched the boy carefully balance himself on a rock. Tanji grinned with total confidence, knowing he'd already figured out the attack and was safe from it. Wu Lingen was amazed by the boy's perfect moves and asked Tian Xiaoyu about them, and Tian admitted it was all thanks to the special technique. She told him that the celestial eye let Tanji hear the ancient ancestors' divine thoughts, as if the spirit had taken over his body. Right then, a mighty glow burst behind him, showing the face of a grand spirit from his ancestors. Just as the young warrior got ready to strike, a red glow started wrapping around her hands. With that, Tianji unlocked a move that mixed earth powers with martial arts, giving him a 90% chance of success, and then the girl sprinted forward in a flash of light to reach her opponent. The young man didn't panic. He calmly raised his hand exactly where his gut feeling told him to put it. Just as the enemy's fist came crashing down, he slipped it aside with a perfect, sharp block. Even with the block in place, the impact hit him right in the face with all its power. The hard hit knocked the young dreamer backward, and he hit the arena floor hard, losing all sense. While his rival stared on, the young man lay on the ground, beaten and done for. From the crowd, Wingen and Tuchan Xiaoyu called out the student's name, stunned by what just happened. Bruised but standing tall, the boy scribbled in his notebook that he'd need to figure out how much stronger to be next time. As soon as he finished writing his notes, he collapsed once more, making Wingen worry even more. Just then, Instructor Mei Ranking praised the young master for his win, while Wingen worried about his friend's safety. From the back row, the dean watched the fighter's growth but sighed that he still wouldn't try the Yu family's secret skills. Once the battle ended, the victor cast a quick look up at the instructors in the sky before turning to walk away from the arena. At that moment, Instructor Mayrin nodded and let him step down from the stage. Soon after, Woolingen carried his friend on his back, cheering him on for his amazing strength and special third-eye power. With a puffy face, the young man said he didn't want to learn, while Wingen sighed that he himself was just not good at it. Just then, Instructor Mei Ranking shouted that the second round would be a surprise mix-up and told the chosen students to rush to the stage. From the top seats, Dean and Instructor Huang Luhong challenged the choice to pick opponents by random. Elsewhere, Shirao Hua fretted that he might never get to face Wingen, but Mei Yanli put his mind at ease. The instructor smiled and told them that Wingen had offended way more than just the two of them. Right after that, Mei Rang Sing tossed a crumpled piece of paper into his hand and shouted that the first match was officially on. Standing before the drawing machine, he spread out the papers to show everyone the competitors' names. So the fight was set to be between Wu Lingen and Xiao Huahua, who grinned with confidence. But Tuan Xiaoyu and Morang Chan couldn't believe it was random, while Wingen just said he'd heard nothing about it. The instructor jumped up to defend himself, asking how anyone could rig the results to trick new disciples. Right after, Shirao Huaho spoke up, saying he believed Instructor Mei wouldn't favor anyone. Tan Xiao saw her rival hesitate, so she called him arrogant and afraid to fight. Wu Ying gave a serious look and cut her off, saying that was enough talk. He then said that to reach a higher level he could not take one step back. While Murang Chan and Tuan Shou watched their friends get serious, the visionary spotted how interested they were and made a note of it. With both fighters ready, the arena went quiet, holding its breath for the match to begin. Xiao Huaho smirked, surprised that his rival had the nerve to step up and fight. Then the young man surged forward to settle both old and new scores at once, slamming his weapon down on the arena floor. Right away, Tuzan Xiaoyu cried out about the surprise strike, but Instructor Mei Rang Sing acted like the game had already begun. Feeling annoyed, the fox decided that everyone at the academy seemed to be out to get her brother. Inside the arena, the two fighters traded a rapid stream of fast punches. With a lightning-fast move, the attacker left a ghostly afterimage to throw his opponent off balance. The moment a fan shouted a warning, Wu Lingen spun around to face the trouble coming from behind. He threw a quick punch, and Xiao Huaho admitted the boy's speed was truly amazing. Right then, a huge blast of blue energy exploded all over the arena. The challenger stood his ground and used his arm to block the blue flames rushing toward him. With that, his rival said they had already cracked his moves and promised they wouldn't let him get anywhere near them. Wu Lingen felt the heat building up from the energy and blew on his hand to cool it down. Suddenly, the young man's face shifted as a truth hit him. With a shout, Xiao Ho called out the 3,000 fire dragons technique, bringing two huge blue flames to life. The fire grew so hot that his enemy had to step back, knowing he couldn't stand against the attack with his body. From afar, Mei Yanlei felt a surge of satisfaction as she cheered on the attack to trap her opponent. Bid kept his eyes on the brawl, secretly wishing that Wingen would finally show off his dark powers. Trapped at the edge of the arena, he saw his enemy prepare a new attack to finish him off for.